Greetings and salutations, dear viewers. Your host, Nakatalili here, and I'm once again bringing you to the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, 2.4 was released not long ago, and with it a great deal of new content. I know we still have a couple things to catch up on, but for the time being, let's go ahead and see what kind of trouble we can get ourselves into with the new dungeons released. Hi, Ogre. I'm going to go ahead and do the duty roulette, and we'll see what fate decides we go to. Quite the wait for this one, but I suppose most people are out leveling up Rogue and Ninja. Hooray! We finally got our group together. It'll be a 4-man dungeon. This is one of the 3 dungeons added in 2.4. These dungeons you can run through to get Poetry Tome rewards, as well as Soldiery Tome rewards. And it looks like we're gifted with going into Snowcloak. Snowcloak, of course, being the one new dungeon added that's not a hard mode of an existing dungeon, and Snowcloak you actually have to unlock in the main scenario. You can't simply do a quick one-off quest and be done with it. And apparently the healer wants us to hold up. Actually getting the show on the road this time. As usual, there are any number of trash mobs between you and the first boss. These small little deer-looking duders are the first ones you're going to encounter. Now, the 3 new dungeons added have a higher item level requirement to get in. In fact, if memory serves, it's 80, and Snow Goober. So do expect all of the enemies to hit harder and have more health than you have expected up until now. For the most part, the regular enemies are trash mobs, for the most part. Even if some of them have special attacks or anything, none of these have anything to really worry about. Some of them may have an AoE here and there, a conal or some such here and there, but it's, for the most part, it should be things that you're used to dealing with at this point. A couple Spriggans up top, as well as falling icicles, so do be wary. Now, after they land, they'll wait just a moment before bursting once again. So be careful around the falling icicles, but that aside, not a lot to worry about. The Spriggans themselves don't do anything too much of note either. With the 2 Spriggans dead, we can continue on to find a couple wolves. Now the wolves, just as before, they tend not to really do anything of too terrible note. Will have more HP than you're used to dealing with, but I've already mentioned that. If they do anything fancy, it'll just be like conal AoE or something of that sort. It's nothing you shouldn't be comfortable dealing with. Three more wolves waiting right around the corner. With 3 wolves dead, continue on just a little ways to find a white bear. Yet again, another new enemy, but once again, nothing you haven't especially seen before. I think they do the same things that we've seen in Halatali hard mode. But regardless, a bear is a bear, and he'll go down just as any enemy before now has. Why the bear is carrying a key on him is beyond me. But with the key, you can actually move on to the next area, which continues to have the same enemies we've dealt with for a little while now. The difference this time is that there is an ice bomb. The ice bomb functions a little bit differently from the bombs that we've found run up to up until now. These bombs will not simply explode randomly, and that's the end of the fight. They do explode from time to time, dealing an amount of ice damage to the area, but when they explode, they do not die. You have to kill that bomb. Now that explosion, I'm not sure if I actually show off here or not later on, but the explosion that the ice bombs do can be stunned. And that opens the door to our first boss. There's not a lot to the very first boss. Mostly just don't stand in things and do what you can. Occasionally ice bombs will spawn and you'll need to destroy those as adds. You don't want to pull them too far towards the far wall. The tank's got him about where you need him. Sort of close to the middle of the arena, but off to one side so as not to hit everybody. He has an attack called Snowdrift that, as far as I can tell, will sweep the arena, as you can see there, doing an amount of damage, and it will add a stack of something on you that I'm not exactly sure what it is called. It escapes my memory. But, you can see he's done it again, and I now have 2 stacks of that effect on me. When you get 3 stacks on you, you will very briefly turn into an icicle and take an amount of damage. When the icicle breaks, you'll really just be back to normal. So back to beating on the boss. You saw the ice... You saw the bomb, the ice bomb, snow bomb thing. You saw it spawn very briefly. Again, an AoE to dodge. Again, a snowdrift to put on you. Maybe it's 4 stacks. It's 4 stacks, not 3. Frost bomb. There we go. Frost bomb shows up. It's an add like any other. But for the most part, that's the fight, and there's not a lot you can do with it. About 2/3, 3/5 of the way through the fight, he will use an attack that puts an amount of frost along the outside ring, which if you stand in, I think if you stand in, you'll simply take damage over time. So he's effectively shrunk the arena some, but there's still more frost bombs spawning. He'll continue to do the snowdrift that puts another stack of the debuff on you. I think it's snowdrift that puts the stack of the debuff on you, but I've seen it show up at odd times. The bombs, if not killed fast enough, will eventually explode, and these frost bombs are not like the bombs we've had before. They will explode, hitting everything in the arena, and that explosion that hits everything in the arena cannot be stunned. You just have to kill them. They don't have a huge amount of health, though, so they should go down before that's too big an issue, as long as one of you isn't frozen like I was. And you can see I attempted to stun it there, and it didn't work. And I'm glad we killed him before that went off, because I was not in the best position for dodging it. Now, as loot for beating him, you'll get a single item. I think you can get crafting items as well, which you can sell if you don't feel like crafting. The Antique Tassets is part of the set of antique armor, which you can turn into Rowena in Mordona to get item level 90 gear. So this dungeon effectively drops item level 90 gear. Now, just outside, you'll see more snow goobers. They fight much like goobers do. They've got the sneeze, which is the conal AoE you saw previously. And if you look, more will even fall down in giant snowballs, because that's honestly hilarious. Just around the corner, after you're done dealing with the goobers, you can see 3 ice sprites out in what looks like a terrible blizzard. You will want to pull them out of the blizzard, but then once you do, you can honestly just deal with them like any other. As long as you're standing in that blizzard, you'll have an effect on you called Frostbite, which does some minimal damage over time. But if you get it on you while you're fighting the ice sprites, it can just make things a little bit harder. When outside of battle, however, your health will honestly regenerate over time faster than the debuff can actually deal damage to you. You can see I had it on me for a brief moment there, but there's a single crow here and a couple more ice sprites. If you can pull them out of the blizzard, it's going to be easy enough from here to simply take down a lot of them. This dungeon has such nice music, if a little repetitive. See a big ogre-looking dude there? I'm just going to run straight through this and get the effect on me. No big deal, though. Fight this guy, on the other hand, he will fight exactly like the enemies that you have seen these guys do up until now. They've got double smash, which is a frontal attack that hurts like the son of a gun. He's got elbow drop, which is beautiful to behold. But not the biggest worry. A couple more ice sprites up ahead and some birds on the far side, so continue dealing with these as we've dealt with them up until now. Birds on the far side, which, again, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but by this point you should be experienced enough in the game to be able to handle the basic mechanics of playing, which is, you know not to stand in things, you know to heal tanks when they're dying, and that lot. There'll be 3 birds over here, and another snow goober that shows up. You may want to take out the snow goober first, but to be honest, I don't think it matters too huge amount. They'll all do about the same damage, and they'll all take about the same damage. We're going to go ahead and kill this bird first, then I'm going to tab over and take out the goober. The snow wall explodes when the last one is defeated. We find our way to the giant Yeti snow goober. Now, the fight with the Yeti can actually be slightly more tricky. Though, to be honest, what the tank here is explaining is mostly all you need to know. When the fight begins, you can simply run out and beat on them. There are 2 different type of ads that will spawn as the fight goes on. The Spriggans will spawn. The Spriggans you do not want to mess with. Do not kill them. The Yeti, on the other hand, has an attack called Frozen Mist, which is an exceptionally large conal AoE. And then the final ad is the Frostbound, another ogre-type dude. And he fights exactly like the guys we've seen before now. He's got the frontal conal, he's got the rear conal. Now, the Frostbounds, on the other hand, you do want to DPS down as much as possible before going back to dealing with the Yeti. Now, as I was mentioning before, you do not want to kill these Spriggans. You instead, and the tank is going to want to do this, the tank is going to want to aim his Frozen Mist conal AoE at the Spriggans. If it hits a Spriggan, it will actually trap them in a snowball. The snowballs, then, are key to interrupting the Yeti's large arena AoE. You can see it going off again here, so it's going to hit all of them. You can see it turn a couple of them into a snowball. Another Frostbound spawn, so we're going to be dealing with them. And now if you hit a snowball with Frozen Mist, it'll grow into a much larger snowball. I'm honestly not sure if there is a good or bad side to doing this, but it's funny, knowing that there's a Spriggan trapped in there. When he does his large AoE, though, that will essentially hit everything in the room, what you have to do is you have to go punch a snowball. And doing it will send out a shock wave. And now you want to hit the Yeti with that shock wave. If you hit him with it, it will interrupt his attack. I'm yet to figure out exactly how to aim where the thing goes, but I feel like it's simply whichever direction you're facing when you hit it. So you'll want to put the snowball between you and the Yeti. I haven't actually attempted that yet as practice, but that's what I can assume happens. Now, if you do manage to avoid stunning his large AoE, not only do you take an amount of damage, you saw me take 3,000 damage, but you also get a debuff on you that lowers your, or raises your vulnerability. So you're going to continue to take more and more damage. This is a stacking debuff, so if you don't manage to, and it lasts for a very long time, so if you don't manage to stun that AoE, the stack will just continue to go up and up and up until eventually it's just one-shotting you. Now again, this is where I feel like I'm just hitting that and shooting it the wrong way. Someone else managed to stun it though. And that should be enough to take down the Yeti and finish the fight. Get some more tomestones. For beating them, you get some loot. Not only are there the antique items that you can turn into Rowena, but the accessories you get are just straight up the accessories that you used to get from Rowena. The heroes items, which are all item level 90. Now, as soon as you beat that boss and move on, there are a couple of glacier sprites. Honestly, it's pointless to kill the glacier sprites. After an amount of time, the glacier sprites will do a small AoE around them, and after they do that AoE, they explode and die. That's it, and that's it, that's the end of them. It's simple enough to just run out of the way of it and not get hit by it, and then you don't have to worry about them anymore. In fact, it even counts as you killing them. You get the money for it and everything. So they're really just not worth your time. If you can catch one on its own and everybody focuses on it, you can kill it before it explodes. But if you're even fighting two of them, just avoid the AoEs and you don't have to worry about them anymore. The ogre that shows up there is the only thing that you really did need to worry about, and he goes down just as easily as everything I've mentioned before. Now we approach the next room, which is sort of an interesting room. There will be a number of gauntlets, I suppose you could say, that you're going to have to do a couple fights back to back. The first one is the ogre guy, as well as a number of ice bombs. The ice bombs fight exactly like all the ice bombs you fought up until now, as does the ogre. I'm focusing down the ogre first. I don't know if there is actually an advantage to taking down the ice bombs first. I know the ogre will generally use more AoEs than the bombs, so killing him will prevent an amount of running around. Killing the ice bombs, however, they still do their AoE, and you can still stun it. With the first group down, another couple walls break down and more enemies enter still. This time it's a large alligator and a couple of spriggans. As before, I'm downing the alligator first. The spriggans, I do believe, have an AoE that they can drop in various places. And a moment ago you saw a stalactite fall down, which is the exact same as the one we saw before. It'll crash into the ground, doing a small amount of AoE damage, and then after a moment they'll explode in a slightly larger AoE. I'm killing the alligator first. I don't know if there's an especial advantage to defeating him over dealing with the spriggans, but there you have it. With the second round of dudes defeated, another wall breaks down, and a coin counter comes out, and another icicle falls, but it honestly drops somewhere where you probably won't be anyway. The coin counter does standard coin counter stuff, however he does leave markers on the ground, so you don't have to be paying an unreasonable amount of attention you can simply fight him and not get hit by not stand in the AoEs. And now with the coin counter dead, a couple more stalactites fall down, but more importantly, the path opens so that you can progress onwards. Now, of course, given the story, it makes sense that there are dragons here, so be prepared to deal with a couple of the Avis. These guys fight exactly the same as they fought in, I don't know, the hard version of that one dungeon, what had the dragons in it. The Avis will let out a scream that does an amount of damage, so you want to kill them fairly quickly. There are also a couple of Harriers. Now, the Harriers will cast Dragon's Blood, which I've never let actually go to completion, but I'm pretty sure we'll turn them into dragons just the same. Probably another Avis, which is all you need. However, it can be interrupted and stunned, so that's fine. In turn, though, the Harriers should be your first priority in taking down, even though the Avis themselves are somewhat dangerous to deal with. With the final one defeated, there will be a finger on the ground. That's terrifying. I imagine it's just a key, which can then be used to open that gate, and it lets us now confront the boss of the entire dungeon, Fenrir. Fenrir has had a long and storied history in the Final Fantasy franchise, and now he's here waiting for us. Aside from don't stand in things, the most general advice I can tell you is when he starts casting Lunar Cry, hide behind a pillar. That aside, we'll get to those as we get to things. Okay, the tank's going in, and we can get going. To begin with, you can simply wail on him at the very start, though a number of mechanics will be coming up as the fight goes on. He hit the tank, which with what appeared to be a cleave, and then he has 1,000-Year Storm, which not only obscures your view, so it's difficult to see, but does a fair amount of damage just across the board. Stalactites will fall. Now, unlike the previous stalactites, which exploded after a moment, 2 of the 3 that fell will actually aim at a player and shoot off at them. This happens almost immediately after they fall, so keep an eye out for the red marks on the ground. He will generally do 1,000-Year Storm at the same time as these, so be prepared to look through the storm to see that AoE. However, you see this time, he's now casting Lunar Cry instead of 1,000-Year Storm, which means you get to run and hide behind the third remaining pillar, which will explode very briefly after. And that is effectively the pattern of the fight. He'll cycle back and forth between doing these two. He'll summon down 3 stalactites, 2 of which will shoot off at the same time as he does 1,000-Year Storm, and the third one will explode very briefly after. And then the next time around, he'll do very much the same thing, where 3 fall down, 2 of them aim at person and fly off while he's casting Lunar Cry, so you have to run off and hide behind that last one. And that's effectively the fight. If you get hit by Lunar Cry, by the way, Fenrir will launch himself at you and all but one-shot you. I haven't been beaten, I haven't been killed by it myself, or I haven't been hit by it myself, so I'm not entirely sure how much damage it does. But regardless, after Lunar Cry, he will dive at whoever has the most hate, probably the tank, and try to eat them. It doesn't appear to do a lot of damage, though, so honestly, it's just his means of getting back to the tank. And with that, he is defeated. For beating him, of course, you get 25 tomestones of soldiery, as well as a number of poetics tomestones, the new ones that can be used to buy item level 120 gear. But that is Snowcloak. Until next time, everyone.